Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me on this four-part series on Introduction to Hardware Asset Management with Microsoft and System Center Service Manager in Cybersyn. For those of you who don't know me, I am Michael Adenovich, the Solutions Architect Manager for Cybersyn, which we've got some exciting stuff to cover today. I do have a few slides to go through. Once I complete the slides, which I promise I'll try to get through those as quickly as possible, we'll jump more into a demo there. Try to keep it as interesting as possible. Just some housekeeping items to cover real quick. This is a non-interactive webinar. If you do have any questions, please do post those in the GoToMeeting, or I should say GoToWebinar question panel. That should be on the right-hand side of your screen. I did carve out some time. I'll address those questions at the end of today's session there. I am recording today. Oh, and if I am unable to answer any question, I do have your email from the registration, and I will follow up via email. I do promise on that. I am recording today's webinar. I will post this out on Vimeo probably in about a day or two, so this way you can reference this at a later time, or if you want, you could recommend this to a coworker. I would appreciate that. If you haven't been out to Vimeo, it's Vimeo. Do a search on Vimeo space Team Cybersyn, and you'll find well over 200 videos that we have created. Great videos out there. Technical videos, how-to videos, some marketing videos, but lots of great stuff out there, great resource for you. If you haven't been out there, I encourage you to go out there. A lot of new faces out in attendance today, so I'm going to cover a little bit about Cybersyn and who Cybersyn is. We started in 2012. We are headquartered in San Diego, California. We do have offices in EMEA location as well as the APAC region. We have well over 1,200 customers in 65 countries throughout the world. Our roots originally started in System Center Consulting. As such, we have logged well over 52,000 consulting hours implementing System Center and Cybersyn solutions. So truly, we are the experts. And we have our renewal rate of 95%. We're very proud of that. And that's obviously because of the products that we put out, the support that we provide, the services that we provide. So we're pretty excited about that 95% renewal rate. In addition to that, we've been awarded a number of awards. I'm not going to get into the awards. I don't want to waste anyone's time. If you want to know more about the Cybersyn awards that we've received, I encourage you to go out to cybersyn.com to find out more about those accolades as well as some of our other products. So what do we do, and where does Cybersyn fit in? Well, Cybersyn, like I said, we started in 2012. We actually started as System Center consultants, specifically in systems or the Service Manager module as well as Configuration Manager module. We saw opportunities to enhance those solutions. So as such, we have developed a number of applications specifically for the service management or ITSM aspect, obviously layering on top of Service Manager. We have our asset management solution that obviously layers on Service Manager, but it is leveraging data from Configuration Manager. And we're going to talk more about this today, but it is a full lifecycle asset management solution there. So lots of great stuff. Again, we'll talk more about that throughout the demo here. Our CyberSyn Control Center application, this is something that we're very excited about. This here is a solution that layers on top of Configuration Manager and provides extended capabilities within Configuration Manager. It's actually a web-based portal that is very simple, very intuitive, that you can provide to your IT staff so that they can leverage ConfigMan features and capabilities in an easy-to-use web-based interface. It does have a number of features, like I say, that enhance Configuration Manager. If you want to know more about the service management products, the control center products, again, lots of great stuff on cybersyn.com, vimeo.com. Again, I encourage you to check out those sites. And then, of course, we still have our roots of consulting services. I'm not going to, if you're looking for design and implementation services, or maybe you want to do some really advanced configurations and things of that nature, or even training for that matter, reach out to us at team@cybersyn.com. More than happy to set up some expert consulting services for you. So a little bit about some of our customers. I'm going to go through each and every one of these in detail. No, I'm teasing. I only want to go over 2 points in this slide here. As you can see, we cover all industries. Service Manager and the CyberSyn products, we are not an industry niche solution, if you would. It doesn't matter to us whether you're in retail, automotive, sports, legal, government, EDU. We cover all different industries there. The second point that I want to key in on here is if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, toward the center there, information technology, you'll notice that Microsoft is listed there. They actually are leveraging Service Manager in a number of their divisions and are using the CyberSyn solution. A little bit of trivia. I thought it's kind of interesting, so I wanted to point that out. So, all right, let's get into the meat here, and then let's jump more into the demo. As I mentioned, it's a 4-part series. Today is the first part of the series, so I wanted to kind of give you a high-level overview of what to expect. So for today, we're going to talk, it's more of an intro of the the CyberSyn asset management solution. So we'll go ahead and I'll provide you a high-level overview of the solution, as well as what some of the new features are of the asset management solution, and what we have on the roadmap, what we're considering to add to the roadmap. And we do need your help with that future roadmap. So any suggestions that you have, please do leverage the CyberSyn Community Portal. I'll talk more about the CyberSyn Community Portal later on here. We're going to talk about how to install and update the asset management solution, as well as the different asset classes that we provide with our solution. But more importantly, and this is really going to be the good stuff, is importing your data into the asset management solution. I'm going to go a little more in depth with that during the demo aspect there. So we are going to cover installing it. Well, we'll talk about installing it, and then we'll talk about the settings as well as importing data. The next series, or the next webinar, which is next month, if you haven't registered for it, again, go out to cybersyn.com and do register for the next 3 series there. Establishing your process. Very, very key to managing your assets. A lot of people think, hey, once we install an asset management solution, we put in the data, it's going to do everything for us. I wish it worked that way, but really need to work with your processes there. It's not a matter of installing. It is a matter of also making certain that processes and policies are put into place and that they're followed. So they're going to cover a number of things. You guys can read the screen, the different processes to consider. More importantly, how to map those. We don't care about documenting and establishing those. They'll talk more about that during the demo. And then keeping the assets up to date, very, very critical, because you want to make certain that whenever you're pulling reports, that data is accurate. And the only way that that's going to happen is to keep up those assets through process. So I can't stress enough the importance of that webinar. And these webinars are not going to be death by PowerPoint. And then also some of the things to identify as far as issues and how to correct those. Or that could be the next one here. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun. The third series is going to be identifying and overcoming roadblocks. Very, very key. Again, these are things that you need to address. What we say by identifying roadblocks through our experience in working with some of the customers, whether that be process management and how to get over that, or it could be some technical things or just policy, or I'm not articulating here very well, but really they're hurdles that we have seen throughout asset management installs and things of that, and how to address those. And by the way, it is the consulting services team that see this stuff hand in hand that are doing the next set of these webinars. So it's going to be really technical and more in depth. So, and then of course, setting up notifications, automations, as well as vacations. I don't know where they got that from, but they're going to talk about that. Notifications are very important, especially when it comes to software assets. If you are running low with your software assets and you're going to fall out of compliance, or if assets have not been returned, if they've been loaned out and not returned in a set period of time, but then also how to do a lot of automation to improve efficiency within that asset management process there. So really, we're trying to reduce the human error. Again, the whole goal of this is to make certain that once you've installed it, your policies are set up right, you're doing things to improve automation so that at the end of the day, you always have accurate data within the system. And we're looking at this holistically, not just from a technical perspective, but a process perspective, a business perspective, and so forth. So lots of great stuff that's going to be covered. So real quick, let's talk about what's new in our asset management solution. We've just recently released a new version. I believe it's 8.0.7, which now introduces mobile device capabilities. So if you go into the hardware asset, you will notice that you will have a mobile tab now for your assets, provided, and here's the thing, provided that your asset type on that hardware asset is set to mobile. So there's a new, once you do the install, it will set up a new hardware asset type for you called mobile. If you select that on the hardware asset, then and only then will that mobile tab appear, so that now you can better manage those mobile devices from an asset management perspective. So I do want to point out it's not an MDM solution. This is an asset management solution. As part of that, there's some new enumerations lists that are provided for services and your data plan, whether that be the service provider that is providing the service and the type of service that it is providing. Another thing is that you will see that from an asset management perspective of mobile devices, there are key fields that you want to manage as part of that mobile device management. So we put in those fields by default there. So you shouldn't need to customize or extend the solution. Everything you need from an asset management of mobile devices is going to be there for you. So it's going to make it a lot easier for you to manage those types of things. So from a roadmap perspective, here's what we have planned for our next release. Anyone who's worked with the asset management solution today knows that out of the box we have a hardware catalog items, which predefine predefine the hardware assets that IT and the asset team deliver or provide to the end user community. So now we're establishing software catalog items so that this way we're providing what software assets are provided in a much easier way to do it than using the software asset class. It's going to hold more information relevant to cost and things of that nature. What we have on the roadmap here, or not the roadmap, I should say, what we are considering. There's a big difference between what we have on the roadmap and what we're considering to add to the roadmap. Again, this is where we need your feedback and your input from the community portal that we have out there. We do need your suggestions. These suggestions that you see, we are looking to add, which is software asset usage reports, which is going to be very, very beneficial, as well as activity logs for hardware assets. I know that that's a common request that we get, so we're looking to add that capability. And then again, what would you like to see? Please do provide suggestions on the CyberSyn community portal. We do appreciate that. And let's go ahead and move this slide. So what do we need for the asset management solution? What do we need to review? If you're going to go ahead and begin installing the CyberSyn asset management solution, we do layer on top of your existing solution. So you don't need an additional infrastructure. So therefore, before you install, we're going to, again, leverage your existing infrastructure. Is your environment healthy? So you're going to want to validate the health of your service manager environment. If you're borderline right now with performance issues, I don't think it's a wise idea to install another set of tools that are going to add additional workflows and things of that nature. So you're going to want to check the health of your service manager environment. Maybe you need to tweak some configurations. Maybe you need to purge the database to improve performance, increase your resources. There's lots of great information out there. If you need assistance with that health check, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. Also, what's your end goal with your asset management solution? Have that end goal in mind so that this way, if you have that end goal, you're going to configure the system to achieve that end goal. Very, very important. Don't go into that blind. What are your asset management procedures and processes? Again, that's going to help to architect and design how you configure the system, because obviously we want to configure it and tailor it toward your processes and how your people are going to work. So please do have that in mind and set that, have those procedures ready. And as part of those procedures and your end goal is that the financial and contractual data. The solution does It is a full life cycle asset management solution. Obviously, that's going to incorporate your financial and your contractual data. But I have found in many conversations that some organizations really concentrate, all they really need is the contractual data. They haven't advanced from, they don't need the financial data. That's fine. So we're going to get your contractual data. Where is that contractual data? Where's the authoritative source of that data? Is that data accurate? These are questions that you're going to want to ask. If it comes to the financial data, again, what is the authoritative source of that data? Is that in the hands of procurement, finance, accounting? What systems? What data do you need from those systems? So these are questions that you're going to want to ask yourself and the different teams as part of this process here. The other thing is who has access to this data within the asset management solution? So you're going to want to understand, is it going to be certain IT staff at level 1 or on the desktop team that need access, but only a small layer of access? Obviously, your asset managers are going to be on a different level. But you're going to want to figure out who has what access. Again, you're going to want to go through that. And then, of course, your reporting goals. You need to know where you stand with your asset management solution. So it's kind of nice to have an idea of what type of reports you want. If you don't know what type of reports that you want, Cybersyn can help with that. Especially we can architect them and design them so that this way you can measure how you're doing. Provide you the data that you need on an annual basis for budgeting purposes and what have you. But at the same time, you may want to measure how you're doing. Now, we provide a lot of reporting tools. I'm not going to get into that today. That's later on, but we do provide a lot of different reporting methods out of the box. So, okay, installing the asset management solution. There's nothing to it. Like I said, I'm not going to cover the install today. The documentation is very, very clear and articulate. It's just a matter of importing the management packs and copying a couple of DLLs and so forth. It's very, very straightforward. It's simple. It's 15 minutes. It's not even worth covering in a demo. The only thing that I will point out is that there are a number of products for the asset management solution within the edition. Each of those are a separate install, and each have their own separate installation documentation. So be aware of that. And those are broken down: the asset management solution, the asset import solution, and the asset Excel. So do keep that in mind. And those, again, are not only separate installs, they're separate downloads. So be aware of that. So if you're going to upgrade, make certain that everything's in sync. The other thing is, if you already have the solution, if you're going to upgrade, again, the documentation is articulate, clear-cut. I'm not going to get into the detail of that. If you already have it installed, you're going to have a problem replacing some of the DLLs and copying those over. When that does happen, stop the MOM agent or Microsoft monitoring agent. If you're running the data warehouse and leveraging asset management within the data warehouse, you have a few additional steps. Again, the documentation is pretty clear cut. I'm not going to read each of these bullets here. For those that need to know, it's pretty much, again, listed here. The only thing I will say is once you've installed the management packs and replaced the DLLs, most cases, you're going to want to restart the data access service. I typically like to restart all the services, but at a minimum, you're going to want to restart that data access service. And in some cases, you'll probably need to close and reopen the console there. So what's going to install? And then jumping back now, these are for the people that are new to the asset management solution. So we're going to install a number of different classes. We have our administration classes, which is really the building block of the asset management solution. I'll talk more about that during the demo. But this here is more of your financial structure, your organization and your vendors. This again is the data that is very, very important. Who are you purchasing your assets from? If I look at the bottom there, the vendor class, as well as the different locations. Who am I purchasing? Or I'm sorry, where are these assets located and what's the financial data behind them? Again, I'm not going to go through every one of these classes. I'll do that more during the demo to kind of give you an idea and a look and a feel. Again, here's now your contractual data. The different classes that we provide from a contractual data are leases, support, and maintenance and warranty, and I think that those speak for themselves. I'm going to fly through this because I see I've been talking too much here. I want to get more into the demo here. And then our hardware asset classes, which, we'll be able to manage your hardware assets from a full life cycle perspective, as well as the software assets. I think that's enough. I'm going to move forward here. I'm falling behind. Okay, once the solution is installed, we're going to want to import the data. And we can leverage the different tools, whether that be the import connector, asset Excel tool, to bring in that data. For today, whatever method that you're going to use, there is a pecking order. A lot of people are unaware of this, but when you're bringing in data, you want to do it in a certain order, because as you go further down the line for importing data, you're going to want to have relationships. And in order to have those relationships, that data has to be in the system. So that's why there's a certain pecking order. And as you can see, that pecking order is pretty straightforward. We're going to want to do our vendors first because there's no relationship there. Subnets, so forth and so on. Again, this is going to be recorded. It'll be out on Vimeo here in a couple of days. So you can always reference this at a later time to see what that order is for importing data. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the demo. I think I've talked enough. To apologize there for going over. All right, so let me get to the asset management solution here. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. So what you see here is that in the System Center, or I should say the Service Manager out of the box console, in the configuration items workspace, when you install the asset management solution, it is going to create a folder called Asset Management. Under there, there's going to be 4 folders: Administration, Contracts, Hardware, and Software Assets. If I expand, these are my different classes. So let's go ahead and let's pull up a class here. So let's pull in a vendor class. Again, so we want to know, if I pull up a vendor class, who the vendors are that you're acquiring your assets from. And of course, there's the detailed information that you can see here, who the main contacts are for this particular vendor. I can see what assets we have acquired from these particular vendors. I'm not going to go through every field because I don't want to do a review. I want to get more into importing data here. Again, when it comes to the financial data, such as the purchase orders, and again, we could leverage your authoritative source for purchase orders. That may be a procurement system or a financial system or what have you. We have the ability to import that data in on a regular basis. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up any PO here. Okay, so here And even if you don't have an authoritative source of data, you leverage this to track that information as well. So you can see what the total what the purchase order number is. I'm not gonna go through every field here, but if I scroll down, I've got all the important fields that are relevant, and then also now I've associated the vendor to this purchase order. Maybe you're starting to see the picture why there's a certain pecking order, because now if I'm going to import purchase orders, I need to have those vendors already in the system so I can associate the vendor when I'm importing that data in. So if I now move on to the contracts here, again, I've got my leases, my support, and maintenance, as well as my warranty data. I'm going to jump real quick into my warranties. Let's pick on a particular warranty here. So from a warranty perspective, now when I want to bring in all of my warranty data, or I should say my contractual data, when I'm bringing that in, obviously I'm going to associate my vendor, but I'm more than likely going to have financial data on that particular contractual data. So as you can see, I can now, as I'm bringing in that data, I can associate my financial data, the cost center that this is related to, the purchase order, the invoice, so forth and so on. I can see what assets are part of this warranty contract. So again, now I can do reporting to say, hey, when are these assets falling out of warranty? You could also easily create budget reports because we have the financial cost associated to these particular assets as well. So I'm going to cancel out of here, and I want to jump now. Oh, went too far. Go to the hardware assets. So from a hardware asset perspective, and I'm always going to pick on a particular asset here. So let's say here I have this is just a desktop. And again, it's very nice. Now I've got multiple ways to bring in this data from my hardware asset. I could use, as you saw in the slides, the asset import connector. I could use Excel, asset Excel to bring in the data. I can manually create the data for those one-offs, or through automation, I can have the solution create the asset automatically. So whenever Configuration Manager detects a new workstation or server that syncs to Service Manager CMDB, we have workflows that'll automatically create a hardware asset based on the computer name that's just been introduced into the CMDB through ConfigMan. And so we'll automatically create that asset. We'll automatically create or associate the primary user of that device if you're using user device affinity within Configuration Manager. And then, of course, we have all our relevant fields that you can associate to this asset, along with the enumerator and the status, which, by the way, you can easily modify these lists. And then again, all your relationships. Where's this located? What organization does this belong to? What is the contractual information on this particular asset? Is there a maintenance agreement with this particular asset? What is the financial data on this asset? Again, I'm not going to go through each of these fields. I think everyone kind of gets the gist here. One thing that I do want to point out, and I'm just going to use just real quick this hardware or this workstation that I have. You notice how I don't have a mobile tab. Of course, because this has a hardware asset type of a laptop. But if I change this mobile type, or I should say this hardware type, sorry about that, to mobile, which you would do if you're going to manage a mobile device, you now additionally have this mobile tab here. So now I have the relevant or the fields that I need to fill out in order to better manage my mobile devices here. And now you can easily slice and dice that data as well on reporting. But you can see all the relevant fields are here. Now, you can further define that. If I come back here, you can create subclasses off of mobile. So for whatever reason, if you needed to track, hey, it's an Android or it's an iPhone or it's this type of phone, or maybe you need to track it a different way. Maybe you need to track it by data provider. Who knows? You have that ability, again, based on your process and what your reporting goals are and what you're trying to achieve. So that's why I was stressing earlier, have your processes thought out, what you're trying to achieve, what some of your reporting goals are in order for you to better configure the system to meet your end goals. Anyhow, don't want to go off into a tangent there. So let's jump real quick into software assets, and then I want to just go ahead and mention a couple of other things here. So from a software asset perspective, we're not going to create any software assets out of the box. You'll need to create the software assets, and we do that for a reason. We don't want to import and create software assets based off of the raw data from Configuration Manager. You only want to manage software assets that you have a contractual or legal obligation to. And in most organizations, that's going to really be a small subset of software titles, probably well under 50 titles. So just determine what ones you need, and I'm just going to go ahead and pick one real quick. Again, it's going to be the same thing as the hardware asset class. You're going to have your contractual information, your financial information, what type of license model this is, and then you're going to configure it with these settings here. Again, the documentation is going to describe that based on that, and then my compliance counts there. I'm going to kind of breeze through because I could see I really want to get into importing the data here. One other thing that I want to point out is that when you go after you've installed, you're going to have your settings. The documentation is very clear on the settings because I'm running low on time. I'm not going to cover this. Just a couple of things that I want to point out when you're setting up your workflows. A couple of things. One of which, make certain that you have an appropriate log path. I recommend using a UNC because you want to be able to capture any errors when you want to be able to log errors. So make certain that your log path is correct. Secondly, when you're scheduling your workflows, two things to keep in mind. One, make certain that you stagger your workflows. Don't schedule your workflows to run at the same time because you don't want to peg performance. Stagger your workflows. Secondly, there's an order that you want to use. So let's say that you want to automatically create hardware assets once they have synchronized into Configuration Manager. Great. But make certain that you set this workflow after your ConfigMan connector and Service Manager has completed. So know that schedule your workflow after that. And also don't schedule your workflows, before a backup, or make certain it's not at the same time. I always recommend, hey, let's do our backup, then go ahead and then execute workflows at a later time. Maybe your policy is different, but again, know what your process schedules are. Very, very important there. Okay. All right, let's now go into importing data. So when you create or when you install the asset management solution, There's a second install you're going to want to do for your asset management import. The import connectors are going to install for you. Now, one of the things is that there are, I've got something already set. Oh, this process, yeah, because it's in use by another process. Interesting. Okay. All right, what you're going to want to do is I want to import data into, I'm going to make it simple. I'm going to import data into a simple class here. I want to do the catalog items class. So if you notice, I only have 18 catalog items. So I'm just going to pick any of this item here, one of the catalog items. So I can see the fields that are on here. Again, through my process, I've decided what fields I need to complete, I want to import data to as part of my goal with my asset management solution. So I can see all the fields and I can decide, okay, which fields do I need to complete, or do I want to track my assets? Some of these are going to be required, like catalog item name and so forth. They're going to be required fields. So here now with the asset import process, let me cancel here. I've already decided what fields that I want. So if I go to import here, I could go ahead and I could create a new connector here. Now, whoops, wrong thing. Hopefully the demo gods are going to be with me today. So, a couple of things. I've got options when I want to bring in data. I can use a CSV file. I could do a direct connect to any of the systems that I need to bring in data, whether that be SQL, ODBC, LDAP. In my case, I'm going to use a spreadsheet to bring in my data. So I already know what fields I'm going to use to bring in my data. To save time, I've pre-populated some of the data. So I have a column heading to make it easy for me as to what fields I want to bring into the system. So as you can see, I've got my catalog item, the catalog type, the manufacturer. I wanted to know currency, price, vendor. Now again, this here, in order for me to, this is where that pecking order comes in, is that I need to make certain that if I'm going to associate the vendor field, because that's a relationship field, before I import this data in, I have to make certain that the vendor class has all the data populated in there, because as I am creating the data, I'm going to relate this vendor that already exists in the system to this data. So I need to make certain that that field has the data. The other thing is that model and manufacturer were enumerator list in this classification. So I have to have these fields pre-filled, or that data already in that classification, in order for me to import this data. Also, what's really important is that make certain that the data that you're importing in is accurate data. Because remember, garbage in data is going to give you garbage out data. So I can't stress enough that the data that you're going to import, make certain that it's clean and valid data and that you normalize it. Normalize it meaning that, one, again, it's clean, and then secondly, you have it laid out in the spreadsheet. And it doesn't matter what order you want to have these. You can move things around and I can put it over here if I want. It's irrelevant, and I'll show you now. Okay, so I've got the data that I want. I know that I have to have the vendor data already in the system. The manufacturer and the model are enumerator list. So these fields in that enumerator list, I have to have that data in there already. If I don't, that's fine. It'll error out on me and it'll tell me exactly that, hey, I don't have my enumerator data, and I could go ahead and add that data and rerun that import again. So it's not the end of the world if you don't have that in or you were unaware of it. Okay, that's enough talking. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and fill out my connector here. So I'm going to give my connector a name. We're going to call it Demo 2. And again, let's hope the demo gods are with us. I've created a Cyrus and asset management workflow. It's just a little MP. Now, I want to point my connector to my CSV file. And I have that CSV file. Oh, and by the way, I need to close this file. So once you have your data all set, yeah, you need to close your file before you move on. It will bark at you if you don't. Now, I want to now select the different class that I'm going to import that data. I'm going to do the catalog item, but remember, if I want to pull in, if I wanted to pull in any of my financial data like cost center or invoices, I could select that. Licenses, by contractual data, leases. So whatever data I'm bringing in, I'm going to target the associated, or I'm going to target the class. And that includes hardware and software and so forth. In my case, I'm again just going to do catalog items here. Now, because of the fact that I'm going to be doing a relationship, so I need to relate I'm not only importing data into the catalog item class, but also I'm going to relate relationship data from the vendor class. So therefore, I need to select what we call it for the type projection, so that I have all of the different classes available to me so that I can relate my vendor fields or whatever fields that have relationships. Now I could use subfields if I know exactly what classes I'm going to relate. I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to select all the different classes. And also I want to now define a logging. I want to log any errors as I do this import. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a log path here. So I have my log path because I want to be able to capture these errors. I can run this in test mode. It will actually run through everything, including create the log file to see if there are any errors, but it will not commit any changes to the database. I know I'm running low on time, so again, I'm going to bypass that, and we're going to go for the gusto and try to import that data in. So we're going to go ahead and also you can see I want to use this import connector to not only create data, but if I wanted to, I want to update data as well. So I could easily make changes to the data here. So now I'm presenting, well, how do I want to map the data? The fields on the left are the fields within the asset management solution. The fields on the right are the data from that spreadsheet or SQL query or what have you. So it's pretty easy. All I'm going to do is map the fields. And again, because we have a header, those headers in that spreadsheet will appear here for me to select. So it's pretty easy. I'm going to do a one-to-one here. Catalog item name, I'm going to select this. For the display name, I also want the catalog item name. You'll notice these fields are required fields. So there's only these two fields that are required. I don't care about asset status, but I do care about the model. I care about the price. I do want the product ID. I want the type. I want the cost, manufacturer, and I think, I want website. Now, the only one remaining is, and this is relationship data. I want to associate the vendor. So now I've got all my fields mapped. And by the way, you know that class that I selected up here? That dictates what what fields I have in the data mapping. If I selected hardware or a different classification, I would have the corresponding fields to the left. So just a heads up there. So, okay, I've got my fields mapped, and now I can schedule how often I want this workflow to run. And in my case, so there are certain things that I'm going to want to bring in on a daily, an hourly, a daily, or a weekly basis. There are other items that I may only want to bring in one time. Regardless, you have the option to set that. So I'm just going to disable everything. I just want to do a one-time import here. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create the connector here. Or you know what? Let's just enable the. Yeah, let's do it this way. That's fine. So let's go ahead and create our connector. This may take a moment. See how fast my system's going to run. Perfect. Okay. So now I have my import connector. It has never been run. If I go here in catalog items, you can see I only have 18 items here. So I'm just going to now go back. Well, let's hope the demo gods are with me. I'm going to go ahead and synchronize this and saying, hey, this is disabled. Do you still want to run this? So we're going to go ahead and run this. And now that just triggered the sync process, and that workflow runs every 2 minutes as it states here. So we're going to give this time to go ahead and run. Let's do a refresh here. Okay, so it's going to take about 2 minutes for this to begin the workflow. So one thing that I do want to key in on here while this is executing, I want to go back. I already mentioned the settings. The documentation, the install documentations go through all the different settings and every option. So go through that installation document. It's clearly laid out. But once you install the asset import connector, you also have settings. I ran into this the first time I was importing data. All my data went into the system, but none of my relationship data went in. There is a checkbox for the asset management import settings. So just for that import connector, you have a different settings option. If you don't enable the relationships checkbox here, it's going to import the data but not associate any relationships to it. So make certain that you have this set, and then secondly, your commit batch size too. Make certain that that's set. I recommend leaving the default. If you need to change it, again, that's fine. The documentation will describe what some of the best practices are there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. Let's go back to our connector here. And it says that it ran without issue, and it imported 100%. That's awesome. Cool. Now, one thing that I do want to point out is that it has created my log file at the path that I told it to. And here is that data. Let's kind of expand this a little bit. So it's clearly telling me everything went into the system here. We created these new catalog items for you because they did not exist. We didn't find them, so we created them. We processed 2 lines, and we had 0 failures. Now, when I did this earlier, I don't know which one it is. I'm going to just pick one randomly here. No, that one was successful. I had another one. I had one that failed somewhere. I just kind of want to show you. I think it was on the enumerator. Let's see. Here we go. My enumerators weren't set up. Error with the enumerator. Oh, and that's another thing I want to point out. This is one of the errors that told me it was an error. On my spreadsheet, yeah, I really want to point this out. On my spreadsheet, here, notice I had a category type of just laptop, But in the system, it's actually it's a child class. I have my laptop set underneath a parent called computer. So when I created my spreadsheet, that's what I put in there. You don't have to do that. It searches for children, so, and it just knows that, okay, it's a parent. So you don't have to put in the full path. Just put in the child name. Just a heads up there. Okay, so this is all well and good. Let's go look at our, I gotta move stuff around on my screen. Let's go back to catalog items. And now I have 20 items there. So I have now just imported that data in. Very easy. Now, again, this is really nice when you're setting up the system or you're doing bulk imports, bulk changes. If you only have 1 or 2 items, you can manually create them. But as you can see, I have these now, these 2 classes imported, or not classes, but catalog items imported into the system here. So again, very nice, very easy to do. Again, there is a pecking order, and then that you're going to want to follow. Make certain you know what that is. And then secondly, normalize the data. Garbage in, garbage out. Okay, I think that's enough said. Let's go ahead and let's jump back to our slides here. And I will, as I mentioned, we do have the community forum. The community forum is great if you're not, most of you are familiar with it, those that are not. The community forum is a great resource, not only to provide, hey, you know, we'd like to have this feature added, but also you could post questions out there. And you'll be amazed at all of the CyberSyn experts, partners, and existing customers that will respond to your questions. So again, it's a great resource. Go out there if you want to look to see what questions have been posted. It's probably questions that you're already formulating. There are probably many answers and responses from the community. Maybe not. So feel free to post a question. Or if you've done some custom code related to System Center or CyberSyn, a lot of people like to share their code. You'd be amazed how much code is out there. So if you're not part of the CyberSyn community, I encourage you to sign up. And with that said, let's jump to some of the questions here. So hopefully it's not too bad. Oh, we've got a quiet audience today. I don't have any questions. Alrighty, well, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I hope that you found it very beneficial. And again, please do sign up if you're not already for parts 3, or I should say parts 2 through 4. And again, thank you very much for your time and have a wonderful day. Thank you.